Oh, hello. Today we are going to be talking about the best and worst arcs I read for Q2 of 2022. So I read advanced reader copies for books that are coming out between April and June of 2022. And I like to check in with you guys and just give you the sort of summation of how the new releases that I read early are looking for the quarter. And I will tell you, looking at my stats, I have 4.5 stars. So I have definitely read some books that I consider to be absolutely fantastic. I got to read them early and hopefully contribute to their buzz. And I'm excited to talk to you guys about them. So just a quick rundown of stats. Would this be a check-in for me if I didn't, have issues with my data? I think not. I realized that I left a book out. So in total, I read 15 Q2 arcs. I'm going to also talk about one from Q1. So we'll talk about 16 total books. And on average, I gave those books 3.86 stars, which is between a B+ and an A-. So I enjoyed them. I had, let's see here, 5? Yes, I had 5 4.5 stars, which might be an all-time high. That is very unusual. Basically, there's some baller books coming out in Q2. And so far in the year, Q2 reading has taken up 43% of my arc reading for the year. So we'll see what the final breakdown is, but that's what I know for now. And I would actually recommend all of these. There's none of these that I would not recommend to you guys today. And the lowest rating I gave out is a 3-star. So with that being said, let's dive on in. The one that I've got ranked last is Immortal Rising by Lindsay Sands, and I'm literally having to look up what this one is about because it's been about 6 months since I've read this. Oh yeah, okay, so this is the one. So first of all, do not start with this book. This is number 34 in the Argento Vampire series, which is one of my very favorite paranormal romance series ever. It's a fun series. I kind of gave up on it, but then JK have started reading it again. I don't know. I do love Lindsay Sands. I think that they can be kind of variable in quality at this point in the series, but they are typically pretty fun. This one was with Stephanie, who is that girl we've seen for a while in the series, who can hear everyone's thoughts regardless of how old of a vampire they are. She just hears everyone. And it's her getting together with the son of the crazed doctor who was experimenting on all the vampires, them getting together. So it was a pretty fun one. I just think, yeah, it's hard at this point in that series for them to be great, but I think if you like the series, you'll be satisfied. I certainly was. I would say next would be The Murder of Mr. Wickham by Claudia Gray. And what's kind of funny is I've got 3 stars, and all of them I think I put a sort of, I'm somewhere 3.5-ish, but probably erring on the 3 side. This one is fun because it's all Jane Austen characters from her different books. So it's the Tilneys and the Darcys and the Knights. All of them together, they're at different ages, and they're all coming to this house party, and then, as the title suggests, Mr. Wickham is murdered, and we're trying to figure out who done it. Really, my issue with this book was plot pacing. It just really dragged in the middle, but I thought that the atmosphere was interesting. It was fun spending time with our characters kind of at different points in their lives, and I'm pretty much just always down to see Mr. Wickham be viciously murdered. Aren't we all? Next, I'm actually going to make a correction to my original rating. I believe that I originally gave this 3.5 stars, but as time has gone on, I just don't remember anything about this book really. So I feel like that means it's gotta kind of go down to a 3, and that is Portrait of a Thief by Grace Lee. All I remember is that this is a heist and that it's a lot about the Chinese diaspora and kind of thinking through cultural, theft of cultural artifacts and how we think about museums and what it means to be plugged into our lineage or heritage. I don't know. I don't know. I think it was fine in the moment. It had some thought-provoking things. It was entertaining enough, but I don't know, it just hasn't stuck with me at all. So for that reason, I'm lowering the rating. And I also will say that once it came out, it feels like it kind of just died on the vine. So I don't know. I think it was fine in the moment, but I remember less and less of it as time goes on. Moving to 3.5 star territory. First, we have The Agathas by Kathleen Glasgow and Liz Lawson, maybe? This one I featured in my reading vlog, reading books that were Christie-esque or inspired by Christie. And so if you want to see full thoughts, you can go there. Pretty much my feeling on this was, for a YA book, I actually think this did a pretty good job of incorporating the Agatha Christie inspiration. It was very kind of cartoon, like it felt very campy. So maybe sort of like Riverdale. And yeah, for like a YA small town mystery thriller, I found this one pretty entertaining. And I think that it had some interesting elements of inspiration from Christie's life that I enjoyed. So I think for that reason, it kind of stood out a little bit more to me than some other mystery thrillers I've read recently. See Portrait of a Thief from just a moment ago. Then Set on You by Amy Lee. This is a contemporary romance that is a true rom-com. I think often, we're going to talk about another one, but this is one of the books that I think most purely distills the plot, beats, and overall vibes of a romantic comedy movie and puts it into book form. Basically, the setup for this is sort of hate to love. The heroine is a plus size fitness influencer. She has a run-in with this hot guy at the gym who's a firefighter who like takes her machine, and they sort of become like gym enemies, but then they're thrust together because their grandparents are getting married. Things kind of progress from there. So I think, you know, one thing I will say just as a content warning, this is very much about like fat phobia, things having to do with EDs and, you know, fitness, working out, all of that. If that's not something you want to read in a romantic comedy, that's very understandable. But I thought that this was a really good version of what it was. Like I said, a very good interpretation of a true romantic comedy, which I think often is missold these days. Things that are not actually romantic comedies get billed as a romantic comedy, which then is just the wrong expectation. I don't know. Anyway, I thought this was a very good version of what it was. Okay, and then the book that I had forgotten to put in my spreadsheet and therefore did not include, so let's talk about it now, is Hide by Kirsten White. This is a book that I really enjoyed. It's very high premise, so basically it's a horror version of a hide and seek game in an abandoned amusement park. Okay, that's super interesting and cool. It also has some like cult elements to it. It is horror, so it also has like some supernaturalness, and it is a very, I think, a pretty well executed book. My problem was when you hear the premise, you're thinking you're going to get a lot more of the hiding and seeking than you in fact get. And I think I would have loved this book if we had had more of that. So for that reason, I consider it to be a 3.5 rather than a 4. And I put it as a disappointment in one of my check-ins because it could have been a 4.5 or a 5. Like, such a cool premise, a premise I love, but it just didn't quite give me everything I was hoping to get from it. But would definitely read more adult horror from Kirsten White, because I think this was her first adult book. She usually writes YA. So very intrigued to try more from her, and kudos on having such a grabby, interesting premise for a book. Next, we have To Marry and to Meddle by Martha Waters, and this is the third book in a historical romance series. And this one, I think quality-wise probably isn't a 4-star, but just in terms of me having a good time in a moment where I needed to just have fun, this provided that. It is Jolly Japes in ye historical past. I wouldn't say that these are horribly historically accurate. You guys know that I think that that's like a false construct anyway, but if that's something that you care about, don't read this series. This is filling the Tessa Dare-shaped hole in my heart because it's been so long since we've gotten a Tessa Dare, and this just reminds me a lot of her writing, her humor, her sort of turn of phrase. I think these are really well written, and while I don't know that the romance was wholly convincing just because of the way the timing on it, some of it worked, I just thought that this was really fun. It's a marriage of convenience kind of story, and I'm also just a sucker for that trope. We're seeing characters who we've met in the past, and we're seeing them get their romance. Yeah, I just thought that this was really good, and I think it combined tropes I liked without having some of the kind of like problematic content elements of the second one. Those two things combined made this one just really enjoyable. Then I would say Breathless by Amy McCulloch would be next. This is a thriller, a mystery thriller set on not Mount Everest, but another Himalayan Mountain. It's a version of an isolated close circle mystery. I wouldn't say that it has, well, I mean, I guess it is. You can't leave. People start dying. I think it doesn't have the same sort of pacing that I would typically expect from the truest form of that trope, but I do think it was really entertaining. I really liked the idea of sort of the oxygen deprivation being a part of what was adding to the air of menace. Yeah, overall, I just thought this one was really effective, fun, good page turner. I always am a sucker for sort of that cold atmosphere. I particularly enjoy snowy climes in my mystery. And yeah, I just think overall, I think the thing that kept me from loving this was that I found the mystery to be extremely predictable, like to the point where as soon as the person whodunit walked on page, I knew whodunit. So yeah, that was my biggest problem. But aside from that, I thought that this was a really fun thriller. I would definitely be interested in reading more from the author. Then I would say Something Wilder by Christina Lauren, which is, I would describe this as an action-adventure romance. I think this one, it is definitely a romance. I think that there's a miscommunication that it's a second chance romance. The miscommunication that happened, I do think the author goes to pains to show that it was a reasonable miscommunication. And while on paper, maybe it was, I just think that it sort of strains credulity. So that kind of, I think the romance, while I liked the characters and I was happy they were getting together, I just don't know that the trope quite worked for me. But I thought the writing, as per usual, was very good. And I liked seeing something kind of different. It was like an action thriller romance involving sort of a treasure hunting scheme. So maybe think like National Treasure romance, but in Ye Wild West. That's sort of the vibe. And so I don't know that I've read a book quite like it. I thought it was different, and I appreciated that they're branching out and trying something different. So maybe I guess think of this as a version of romantic suspense, which I don't know that they've done before. I thought this one was entertaining, and I also thought this had a lot of interesting things to say about grief. So I appreciated that as well. Next, we have The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. And this is the other one I was alluding to from earlier, where it is a true rom-com. So in terms of the pacing, plot, humor, all of it is very, very reminiscent of a movie or TV rom-com. Setup for this one is fake dating trope, because our heroine interrupts the hero's wedding to say that he can't marry the woman he was going to marry because she isn't really in love with him. He knew that, but he was okay with it. But they end up calling off the wedding, and he needs a fiance or a spouse for some things going on at work, so she agrees to pretend to date him because she ruined his plan. So love ensues from there. I think that I don't know that I totally bought the relationships because the characters felt kind of flat. You guys see Hastings back here? My little troublemaker. Come on. Trying to chew on my books right under my nose. Yeah, I think I was saying that the characterization, I think, felt a little flat because it was very focused on being a rom-com. So in the same way that those characters often feel kind of flat, I thought that was the case here, but I thought it was very entertaining and a very good version of what it was. Okay, then we have our lone Q1 book that I forgot to review in the last time we did a roundup. So Seasonal Work by Laura Lippman is a collection of short stories that are all mystery based, but I don't know that they read or feel like genre mystery. It feels more like literary short stories that all have like a mystery plot engine to them. I thought that this was really well written. It made me intrigued to try more from her, which is what I really like in a short story collection. If I've not read from the author before, it's exciting if it entices me to read more from them. And yeah, overall, this one was really intriguing, very well executed, and if you didn't get around to this one, might be a fun one to pick up. Okay, now we are in 4.5 star territory, and at least this first one I feel like such a redundant person in this conversation, because my first 4.5 star pick is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Emily Henry does not need me to hype her up. Everybody is looking forward to this book / has read this book and really enjoys it. It's just really, I think, a very good version of what it is, which is sort of it is a genre romance, but I think the writing style feels more like contemporary women's fiction or contemporary kind of book club fiction. So because of that, I think that these books that Emily Henry has been publishing over the last few years just feel a lot more accessible or approachable to people who are interested in romance but maybe don't normally read it. I think that this one deals a lot with grief. It's a lot about kind of meta metatextual awareness of genre tropes, which I loved. And the thing that just like took this from a 4 to a 4.5 for me was the banter. The banter between our leads is absolutely fantastic. It really made me laugh out loud, and I just love that piece. I also really liked the way this book ended. Kind of the resolution of the story felt very satisfying to me. So yeah, definitely one of the best romances I've read this year. Like I said, she doesn't need any hype from me, but Emily Henry is having a moment, and I think that this kind of continues her streak of hits. I think this is going to be a big crowd pleaser among people who like this kind of book. Okay, next we have a paranormal romance, which is Go Hex Yourself by Jessica Clare, and this is a paranormal romance with, I think probably you can think of this in the same realm as Kylo Ren Rey fanfiction. I mean, actually, even now that I'm looking at it, this cover cartoon guy looks an awful lot like Adam Driver. It's that kind of dynamic. She is going to fill the position of a witch's assistant. She thinks it's kind of BS, but comes to realize that this witch is actually a witch. He resents her, but can't stop thinking about her. You know, shenanigans and love ensue from there. I just love the way Jessica Clare / Ruby Dixon does her stories. She's just one of my very favorite authors, and I love seeing her try a new flavor of paranormal. She's done wares and vampires in the past, but I don't think she's really done like witch kind of stuff at all, or at least not very much. So I think that this has her characteristic humor, sort of lightness of touch, and I think we'll get a second one because there's definitely a couple teased in this that could be a second one. So I just love her so much. Thank God for Jessica Clare. Then we have Fevered Star by Rebecca Roanhorse, and this is the second book in her, gosh, what is this series actually called? The Meridian series, I think. Oh my gosh, I didn't notice this in the physical copy. Look at the beautiful map in here. I love it. Okay, this is the second book. You need to go read Black Sun. That's kind of the recommendation here. I am pleasantly surprised. I was thinking that people may not like this as much as I did, but it seems like people are enjoying this book, maybe not as much as I did, but I think if you read and liked Black Sun, you will enjoy this one even if you don't like it as much. I don't think it's as good as Black Sun, but I still think it's very strong, and I'm really intrigued by where it kind of leaves everything, and I really like some of the character development stuff we got, so this was fantastic. Rebecca Roanhorse can do very little wrong in my eyes these days, so that is my, I guess this is my number 3 slot for Q2. Number 2 is a mystery called The Woman in the Library by Sulari Gentile. And this is a sort of metatextual type mystery because it has a framing device, meaning that there is a book within the book. The framing device is a series of critique letters from one author to another, commenting on the story as it goes. And I think that that framing device goes some really interesting places that I was very entertained by. And then the story within the story is absolutely fantastic. It's sort of a reverse locked room mystery because we have a group of 5 suspects who the author, or sort of the point of view character, tells us one of them is the killer, but they were all together when the murder happened. So like, how did that happen? And they were all together in this room in the Boston Public Library. Things progress from there. I just really love their writing. I found this hugely entertaining. That's really what I want from this kind of book. It kept me turning the pages. I was super engaged by pretty much everything that was going on. And just all in all, it was a big hit for me. It comes out at the beginning of June, so I'm hoping other people are going to enjoy it as much as I did. And then number 1 is another one coming out in June, another mystery, and I will tell you this is definitely the surprise of the list because I picked this up sort of on a whim because anytime I see something that looks like an And Then There Were None retelling, I'm interested in it, somewhat for schadenfreude reasons, like I'm usually expecting to try, poke holes in it, but I will have to tell you, this is one of the best And Then There Were None retellings I've ever read. I think if that wasn't such a specific niche subgenre, I would give it a 5-star just on that alone, but that's such a specific thing. I didn't quite feel like, I don't think I loved it enough to give it a 5-star, even though I really respect this, love it. And I feel like it's not very hyped. I picked it up sort of on a whim. So I'm wondering that if this one really is on very many people's radars, it wasn't on mine. And that is called Never Coming Home by Kate Williams. This is a YA mystery thriller. And like I said, it is a retelling of And Then There Were None, which is one of my top 5 favorite books ever. The progenitor of my very favorite trope, which is an isolated closed circle mystery. In this case, they're all getting invited to this island because they are all different kinds of social media influencers. It's basically kind of like Fire Festival in terms of there's a lot of hype for this exotic locale, and these different influencers are getting invited, and they're part of what they're supposed to be doing is documenting their time there. But very quickly it becomes apparent that not all is as it seems. I love the way that this was reinterpreting that story, a YA audience. If you have read the original story, there's so many fun Easter eggs and clues, and I didn't know for sure who done it, even though I had read the original, and I think you definitely can see how the original maps into the ultimate solution of this one. But yeah, I thought that this was absolutely a great example of a YA mystery thriller and of a retelling that is very successful in drawing from its source material, but recontextualizing that for audiences today. I will say some people had some concerns about the way that the rep plays out in this. I'm gonna say that I disagree with those critiques, but obviously your mileage may vary there. And you know, if that's something that you're concerned about, definitely feel free to go read some reviews, and also feel free to disagree with me. But I'll flag that for people just in case. And I will also tell you that considering this is YA, this is very violent. It doesn't read as super, it's not horror, so it's not, I think, intense necessarily, but it definitely, if you look at what happens, it's a lot for YA. So just know that as well. But this is a big surprise of how much I love this one, but I have to say that this was the best arc that I read for Q2. So Never Coming Home, topping the list. And with that, I think that will wrap up my Q2 advanced reader copy roundup. Like I said, really a pretty fantastic set of results here. I had 5 4.5 stars in Q2 arcs, which is nearly a third of the ones I read were a favorite of the year. So maybe the new releases that I don't seem to be reading as many new releases this year as I have in previous, but I feel like the ones I'm picking up, I'm doing a better and better job of picking ones I'm gonna like. And I definitely really like some of these. So let me know if you have read any of these, what you thought of them, or if there's any of these you're excited to pick up. Let me know what you thought about any of these books. And yeah, I think that will do it for me. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below, and I think that that will do it. I hope you're having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!